observed something unusual on radar, and he took to the deck to make an observation with the naked eye, and he witnessed some kind of structure or light emanating up from the water line.
Watching this light emerge from the water at a distance and then go into the air with a solid light, no blinking or anything.
Nearly 50 years after it vanished in a violent storm, divers finally reached the SS Edmund Fitzgerald. What they found wasn't just wreckage, it was evidence. Twisted metal, missing clamps, and a silent vent told a different story. The ship didn't just sink, it failed from within, and that changes everything. The mighty Fitz, built to last. Launched in 1958, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald stretched a staggering 729 feet, the largest freighter to sail the Great Lakes at the time. Forged from steel and American ambition, she was nicknamed both the Pride of the American Side and the Queen of the Lakes. She wasn't just a ship, she was a symbol. For 17 years, she hauled taconite iron ore pellets from the chilly iron ranges of Minnesota to the blast furnaces of Detroit, cutting through the waters with speed and efficiency that made her a legend among sailors. The Fitzgerald was admired not just for her build, but for the tight-knit world she carried inside. Her captain, Ernest McSorley, brought with him over 40 years of maritime experience. The crew respected him deeply, and among each other, loyalty ran strong. It was the kind of vessel where everyone knew their place and trusted the steel beneath their feet. She was a good shipmate, many would say, a ship you could count on. But there's a strange truth about strength. It can breed a dangerous kind of comfort. And on Lake Superior, that comfort would be tested by something sailors feared above all: the Witch of November. In The Witch of November, storm strikes. On the morning of November 9th, 1975, the Edmund Fitzgerald left Superior, Wisconsin, carrying over 26,000 tons of iron ore. The skies were gray, the forecast grim. November storms on the Great Lakes are legendary. Sailors call them the Witch of November. This one lived up to its name. The Fitzgerald wasn't alone. The Arthur M. Anderson, another freighter, sailed close behind. They kept radio contact, tracking each other as the storm intensified. Winds neared 80 miles per hour. Waves grew to 35 feet. By 3:30 p.m. on November 10th, Captain McSorley radioed in, "We're taking on water. Lost a couple of vents. Radar's gone. We're listing." Hours later at 7:10 p.m., his final words, "We are holding our own." Then, silence. The ship vanished. No mayday, no flare. The Andersons searched through the storm but found only wreckage, empty lifeboats, shattered wood. A ship nearly 730 feet long, weighing 13,600 gross tons, was gone. It felt like she just dove into the lake, one crewman said. No one saw her sink. The mystery began. What happened next would spark decades of investigation. But first, divers had to find her, and what they discovered on the lakebed would challenge everything. Disappearance without a trace. On the night of November 10th, 1975, the Edmund Fitzgerald vanished. No distress call, no survivors. By morning, debris, twisted, empty lifeboats began washing ashore. The lake had swallowed her whole. Within 4 days, U.S. Navy aircraft equipped with magnetic sensors found a sonar target 530 feet below Lake Superior. It was the Fitzgerald, but broken in two, one half upright, the other upside down, lying 170 feet apart. This shocked investigators. A 730-foot ship splitting without warning? Families were devastated. Experts had no answers. The public turned to legend. In 1976, Gordon Lightfoot's haunting ballad, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, echoed across radios. Does anyone know where the love of God goes? Captured the grief and mystery. Millions now knew the name. The U.S. Coast Guard opened a full investigation, but there were no black boxes, no survivors, no clear data, just wreckage and theories. Flooding, rogue waves, structural failure. None could be proven. As divers returned with more questions than answers, the Fitzgerald's disappearance became more than a disaster. It became a symbol of nature's power, of human limits, and of a mystery no storm could bury completely. Next came the first official theory and the start of a decades-long debate. The initial official theory, hatch flooding. In 1977, after nearly 2 years of investigation, the U.S. Coast Guard released its official report. The Edmund Fitzgerald likely sank due to flooding through damaged or unsecured hatch covers. These covers, meant to seal the cargo holds, had failed under waves as high as 35 feet. Water entered the hull, pulling the bow down until the ship broke apart and disappeared from radar. At first, the explanation seemed logical. Captain McSorley had reported flooding and missing vents. But the report's tone stirred anger. It implied the crew had not secured the hatches properly. That didn't sit well with the maritime community or the families of the 29 lost men. These were veteran sailors. Blaming them for such a basic failure felt unjust. McSorley especially was respected. If he couldn't survive that storm, no one could, a fellow sailor said. Critics asked, if the hatches were that weak, why hadn't this happened before in 17 years of service? Some suspected design flaws or long-term structural issues. With no black box and limited 1970s tech, no theory could be proven. But over time, this hatch failure explanation became the standard. That would hold until technology returned to the wreck, nearly 50 years later. Enter the forensic drone era, 50 years later. Nearly 5 decades after the Edmund Fitzgerald vanished into the dark waters of Lake Superior, a new generation of researchers returned, with tools the original investigators could never have imagined. A recent mission, equipped with state-of-the-art ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, brought 4K cameras, AI scanning systems, and precision-controlled arms into the icy depths. Their target? The wreck, resting 530 feet below the surface. The control room was quiet as the drone began its slow descent. Monitors flickered to life, revealing haunting shapes, twisted beams, corroded metal, and the unmistakable silhouette of a ship that once ruled the lakes. But this was not the proud freighter of 1958. The Fitzgerald was broken, literally. The bow section stood upright, buried partially in the silt. The stern lay flipped, its giant propeller frozen in stillness. Between them stretched darkness, cold and silent. The goal of the mission wasn't just photography, it was forensics. The team was focused on a specific area, the cargo hatches. These steel covers had been at the heart of the original Coast Guard theory. Now, after 50 years, researchers could finally examine them with clarity. What they saw changed everything. Dozens of clamps, heavy locking mechanisms designed to seal the hatches, were either missing, bent backward, or twisted beyond function. Hatch number 1 had no clamp at all. Others showed signs of mechanical deformation, not failure due to improper closure. This wasn't random, it was systematic. The pattern wasn't consistent with crew negligence, one engineer said. It looked like something tore them apart. Even more telling was the condition of the deck around the hatches. There were signs of extreme force, not just water pressure, but impact stress. Something had overwhelmed the very design of the ship, more than any human mistake could explain. The new footage didn't just reframe the mystery, it undermined the foundation of the old theory. With every clamp the drone passed, the narrative shifted. Maybe the ship didn't sink because someone forgot a latch. Maybe it sank because it was never built to survive what it encountered that night. And then the drone found something even more telling. Hatch clamps compromised. As the drone continued its survey, it paused over a critical point. Hatch number 1, closest to the ship's bow. There in sharp, high resolution, it became undeniable. The clamp was missing entirely. Not damaged, not rusted, just gone. The surrounding metal was warped and peeled, like it had been pulled outward from inside the ship. Further down the line, hatch after hatch told the same story. Some clamps were present but twisted. Others appeared sheared clean off, as if something massive had wrenched them loose. The clamps weren't optional. They were the first line of defense against storm-driven waves. Without them, the ship's cargo holds were exposed to the full fury of 35-foot seas. Investigators reviewing the drone footage noted one critical theme. This wasn't just one or two hatches affected. It was a system-wide failure. That detail, repeated compromise across multiple hatches, suggested structural failure, not human oversight. And that idea carried weight. If the ship's steel gave way from internal stress or aging materials, no crew could have stopped the flood. The clamps didn't fail because they weren't fastened. They failed because the ship was already falling apart. The evidence doesn't say someone forgot to close a hatch, one engineer explained. It says the hatches weren't strong enough to stay closed. For decades, the story had been told as a tale of a ship overpowered by nature. But this new footage flipped the lens. Maybe the storm didn't beat the ship. Maybe the ship beat itself, and the next clue, the sheared vent pipe, would dig that theory even deeper. The sheared vent opening. Not long after revealing the damaged hatches, the drone found something even more troubling. What looked like the base of a circular vent pipe completely sheared off. Where a reinforced metal cap should have been, there was instead a clean, round 4-inch hole leading directly into one of the cargo holds. It was like leaving a window open during a hurricane. That vent, and the others nearby, weren't just cosmetic fixtures. They were part of the ship's breathing system, allowing pressure equalization and air exchange deep within the hull. But now, exposed in a raging storm, they had become entry points. Engineers back on shore ran simulations using the known storm conditions. Waves over 30 feet, winds pushing water with thousands of pounds of force. The result? That single hole, combined with compromised hatch covers, would have allowed thousands of gallons of water per minute to flood in undetected. It tied directly to the captain's 3:30 p.m. radio transmission, where he reported the loss of 2 vent covers. At the time, it sounded like a minor inconvenience. But in the light of this new evidence, those missing vents were far more than cosmetic damage. They were fatal weaknesses, punching holes into a vessel already struggling to stay afloat. And the theory now made sense. The crew may have felt confident, unaware that below deck, water was slowly filling the ship's heart. The Fitzgerald was not just being battered, it was drowning from the inside quietly. As each wave crashed over the deck, that hidden flooding grew worse. It wasn't a dramatic breach. It was a slow, invisible collapse. By the time the ship gave its last message, "We are holding our own," the reality was that she was already lost. The tragedy now looked different. It wasn't a sudden act of nature or a mistake by men on board. It was a case of mechanical blindness, flaws that went unseen until it was too late. And what came next was as brutal as it was swift. The final moments. Structural collapse. With each passing wave, the bow of the Fitzgerald grew heavier, waterlogged by the hidden flooding from above and below. As that front section sank lower into the lake, it began acting like a giant scoop, catching the next wave rather than cutting through it. And then came the breaking point. Engineers now believe that a massive wave, possibly one of the infamous Three Sisters, 3 rogue waves arriving in quick succession, struck the Fitzgerald with perfect, devastating force. The bow dipped, the stern rose. The ship twisted. Then it broke. The Fitzgerald didn't slowly slide beneath the surface. She snapped in half, violently and without warning. The 2 pieces, nearly 170 feet apart on the lakebed, make sense in this context. One section likely sank almost vertically. The other flipped and spiraled down, driven by its own weight and the shock of the separation. No time for a mayday, no chance to escape. All 29 men on board were lost in an instant. It's now clear that the ship's massive frame, once seen as indestructible, became part of its downfall. The very length and stiffness of the Fitzgerald, which gave her speed and carrying power, made her vulnerable under certain stresses. Like bending a ruler over your knee, it holds, and then suddenly, it breaks. In the end, it wasn't just the storm that claimed the ship. It was the combined forces of fatigue, design limits, and bad luck. The men aboard never knew how close they were to disaster. They trusted the steel. They trusted the legend. But the legend, it turns out, was flawed. Alternative theories persist. What else could have happened? Even with the most advanced forensics now painting a clearer picture, the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald still carries shadows. Not everyone accepts the vent and hatch theory as the full explanation. In maritime circles and among those who've sailed the same waters, other ideas continue to hold weight, some technical, others almost mythical. One of the most discussed is the shoaling theory. Some believe the Fitzgerald may have struck an uncharted reef near Caribou Island Shoal just hours before she vanished. If true, this grounding could have caused hidden damage to the hull, weakening the ship long before the storm reached its peak. While no solid sonar evidence has confirmed this impact, survivors from the Arthur M. Anderson recall that Fitzgerald altered course unexpectedly that day, possibly trying to avoid shallow waters. Then there's the Three Sisters hypothesis, a phenomenon where three massive waves, close together and slightly larger than average, hit in rapid succession. These aren't just sailors' tales. They're real, observed on the Great Lakes and known to overwhelm even large freighters. Some believe the Fitzgerald took one wave over the bow, another over midship, and the third broke her back. Other theories go deeper into the ship's structure. Some experts have pointed to metal fatigue, a weakening of the steel after years of flexing and vibration. Though the Fitzgerald was built strong, she wasn't invincible. 17 years of heavy use in rough freshwater conditions could have created microfractures, invisible but deadly under pressure. And then there are the stranger ideas. A few point to geomagnetic anomalies or harmonic resonance. The idea that vibrations at just the right frequency could have amplified structural stresses during the storm. These theories border on science fiction, but they remain part of the wider conversation, reminders of how little we truly control in the face of nature's extremes. Despite the new evidence from drones and simulations, no single theory answers every question. How could such a well-built ship break apart so fast? Why did it vanish without a call? Could all these factors, shoaling, waves, fatigue, have combined in a perfect storm? To this day, the Edmund Fitzgerald remains a mystery with edges, not a case closed. And for the families of the lost, even knowing how it likely happened doesn't ease the grief of why. Legacy, lessons, and emotional impact. When the Edmund Fitzgerald disappeared, she took 29 lives, leaving behind a trail of grief that reached from Wisconsin to Ohio, from Minnesota to Michigan. Sons, brothers, husbands, gone in a moment, their stories forever tied to a shipwreck that became larger than life. In the aftermath, the wreck site was designated a protected gravesite, off limits to casual divers or souvenir hunters. The families wanted respect, not tourism. And every year since 1975, a memorial bell tolls 29 times at the Mariners Church in Detroit, each ring a name, each echo a reminder. But tragedy often teaches. After the wreck, major changes swept through Great Lakes shipping. Cargo hatch standards were revised. Emergency beacons became mandatory. Survival suits and updated lifeboats were added to freighter kits. It wasn't just about technology, but it was about accountability. The system had to ensure that what happened to the Fitzgerald would never happen again. Yet the legend lives on, not only through policy, but through culture. Gordon Lightfoot's song keeps the memory alive in the minds of millions. Museums, documentaries, and school curriculums still tell the story. Even those who never saw the Great Lakes feel something when they hear that name. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead, Lightfoot sang, and in many ways that's true. The Fitzgerald remains down there in the cold dark, intact in mystery, broken in steel, but whole in memory. Because knowing the facts, even all the evidence in the world, doesn't make the loss less haunting. It reminds us how thin the line is between power and fragility, between legends we build and the limits we never see coming. The Fitzgerald was more than a ship. It was a symbol of strength. But the truth uncovered beneath 530 feet of water shows a deeper, more unsettling reality. Technology has revealed the cracks. Myths may comfort, but evidence rewrites history. And what lies beneath Lake Superior has finally started to speak.